I'm determined as fuck to make sure that this video's duration isn't akin to the one belonging to my previous review. Sure, 9 minutes and 26 seconds is by no means my lengthiest example of my film analysis material, but outside of my best and worst movie of the year content, I would say it's too long for an average contribution to my film reviews playlist. So the objective here is to keep this one briefer than my bank account's numerical peak upon my discovery of Viva Street. Chronology wasn't specified in the movie, but according to the internet, Scream 7 takes place at least 2 years after the New York killings, and after giving her that installment off, Ghostface is back to tormenting Sydney in similar fashion, not too adrift from the way I keep pestering my fit Polish neighbour for a more than reasonable portion of her pelvic and or anal prolapse. For those unaware, Scream 7 was originally intended to follow the Carpenter sisters narrative, but because reasons, Melissa Barrera was fired and Jenna Ortega parted ways with the project shortly after. Rebuilding the movie from scratch cost producers $500,000, which doesn't include the $45 million budget provided to make Scream 7, which ended up being helmed by Kevin Williamson, a name that's been heavily involved with every Scream installment to date. Joining Williamson in various contexts is a handful of legacy characters led by modern-day horror's most iconic final girl. It was nice seeing these actors return to their roles, but I just wish the quality of film welcoming them back was simply better, because Scream 7 is essentially a love letter to their previous work that's written on banal paper with a pen filled with platitudinous. The new setting doesn't alienate those unaccustomed, in fact it acts as a fresh canvas for creativity, whilst nostalgia and a plethora of scrumptiously unsubtle Easter eggs serve as the easel. Do you remember when I said that about Scream 6? Of course you don't, but fine words nonetheless. Alas, the same cannot be said about its successor. Scream 7 is all about nostalgia, and I don't say that in a complimentary way. Of course, there are examples across many mediums where sentimentality has contributed positively, but this isn't one of them. The opening scene goes full bore with the nostalgia, and every fucking prolonged second of it is so unrelentingly cringe to the point of embarrassment. For the remainder of the movie's 114-minute duration, the nostalgia overload does ease up somewhat, but is still frequently mainlined, and each dosage is tastelessly injected until the final act, where it briefly resumes overwhelming you with it. The jump scares are subpar. The cinematography is adequate, and the musical visual synergy is modest. The sound effects, however, are on point. Shout out to the engineer for creating such audio treats. The acting across the board is fit for purpose, but you can't really ask much more than that from a slasher whodunit. The violence is nowhere near as savage as it should have been, considering it's a rated 18. Sure, there are a couple of brutal kills that certainly warrants such a classification, but if I was in charge of this shit, I'd have gone balls to the wall with brutality for every death scene to justify the 18 badge, instead of having 2 gruesome kills overshadowed by a plethora of mid-tier murders, similar of which have been seen in movies with a more viewer-friendly rating. Ghostface behaves in typical fashion for the most part, however I missed the elements of comedy that's traditionally incorporated into the chase scenes, but the biggest change in MO is the inclusion of video calling, which is unprecedented in the Scream series. The execution of this idea was unequivocally inconsistent, more so ropey, but I totally understand why creative elected such a direction. It adds an element of modernization to the villain, and also gave a beloved legacy character that hasn't graced the franchise in many years some long overdue screen time. My main gripe with our antagonist, aside from a mediocre reveal and the weak as fuck motivation behind the homicides, was that the killer or killers bared no resemblance to the person or people donning the Ghostface mask. Even if you ignore the shocking difference in overall stature between the stuntmen doing their thing in Father Death garments and the identity of whoever is perpetrating, there's still no way in fuck they'd be able to match the capabilities and durability Ghostface was showcasing here. Yes, I know that when putting on their mask a serial killer enters beast mode, but this was beyond far-fetched. Our baddie was overpowered to fuck, a statement that's validated when discovering who done it. It's a shame that this review is largely negative, because I love the Scream movies. I don't love this one though. It, by ways of nostalgia, attempted to shield us from an unimaginative plot, a clearly rushed script, jolty pace, uninventive death scenes, and the fact that it was foundationalized from the originally intended project falling through, making said shield less sturdy than a Spanish announce table. If you've been paying attention to my channel recently, you'll know that this was supposed to be my last review before I fuck off to New Zealand for 3 weeks. Alas, because of the current situation in Dubai, my trip has been delayed by a year. Sad times, but that's okay because I've booked a bingey 11 nights in Cape Verde, which I'll be embarking on mere days after releasing this video. Very much looking forward to it, of course, but the idea of going from oceanic autumn to African summer took a hard internal gear change. Delightfully, Cape Verde's time zone is only 1 hour behind Blighty's, meaning that the very second I get off the plane, I'll be ready to ragdoll my hotel's cocktail menu so ruthlessly that within an hour after unpacking, the barman's rotator cuff will look like vandalized kebab meat.